Get a DNA test for your son. If he isn't my blood relative, he won't get my mother's house or her money. My mother said this right by my grandmother's open grave. 10 minutes after we had lowered the casket into the ground. People were still standing around. Some were talking in quiet whispers. Some were wiping away tears. Others were already walking toward their cars, trying not to linger near the cemetery longer than necessary. A few paces away stood my 8-year-old son Noah, holding a small white flower in his hand. He didn't understand why the adults were still speaking in whispers. He didn't understand why his beloved great-grandmother was gone. And he certainly didn't understand why his own grandmother, Caroline, was looking at him as if he had done something terrible. I slowly turned my head toward my mother. "Are you serious right now?" She adjusted her black gloves. There were no tears on her face. No grief. Only cold focus. More than serious. "We just buried Mom." Which is precisely why. A chill ran through me, even though it was a hot August day. "What are you trying to say?" My mother looked at me. Then, she shifted her gaze to Noah. "Your grandmother left him too much." I frowned. "He's her great-grandson. If that's who he really is." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" She spoke so calmly that her words sounded even scarier. "I want official confirmation that Noah is connected to our family by blood. You did IVF after all. Who knows what might have happened at the clinic? He's my son." "I know." "He's Michael's son." "I know." "Then what are you trying to prove?" My mother looked me straight in the eyes. "I want to make sure he is a true biological descendant of our family." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the whole situation felt absurd. We were standing by the grave of a woman who had loved Noah his entire life. A woman who called him her little man every single day. A woman who, right before she died, held his hand and said, "Never let anyone make you feel like you aren't good enough." And now my own mother was trying to prove he had no right to call himself her great-grandson at all. I looked at her. "You want to demand a DNA test on an 8-year-old child over an inheritance?" "I want to protect what belonged to my mother." "It isn't your money." She pressed her lips into a thin line. "Not yet." That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just about Noah. This was about money, the house, the land, the inheritance, and perhaps something much bigger that I didn't know about yet. She expected me to argue. Expected tears. Expected me to say no. Instead, I simply nodded. "Fine." My mother blinked. "What?" "Fine. Let's do the test." She clearly hadn't expected that response. "You agree?" "Yes." I walked over to Noah, took his hand, and said, "Let's go home." He looked up at me. "Mom, is Grandma never coming back to us?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetie. Never." I kneeled down in front of him. "Never." He looked back at the grave. "I left her a flower." "I know. Will she see it?" I felt my heart breaking into pieces. "Of course she will." Noah smiled. And in that exact moment, I made a promise to myself that I would never again let an adult make my child feel like an outsider. At the time, I had no idea that I wasn't just agreeing to a simple DNA test. I was agreeing to put our entire family on trial. 3 weeks later, the lab would call me. But the woman on the other end of the line wouldn't ask if I was ready to hear No's results. She would say, "Mrs. Reeves, everything is fine with your son. He is 99.9% your biological child." I would exhale in relief. And then she would add, "We're calling regarding another sample from your family panel." "Which one?" She would pause for a few seconds, and then she would say, "Your mother's sample." In that moment, I still wouldn't understand that the test my mother had demanded to prove my son didn't belong to our family hadn't uncovered an outsider child. It had uncovered an outsider daughter, my mother, and the scariest part was that she had known about it for 40 years. And all those years, she had built our family around a single lie. My name is Allison Reeves. I am 38 years old. I was born and raised in Willow Creek, Ohio. It's a small town where news travels faster than people can close their front doors. Everyone knows who married whom, who got divorced, who bought a new house, who inherited money, who owes the bank. And if something serious happens inside a family, even those who were never invited into it end up knowing all about it. So I knew my mother's demand wouldn't stay between us for long. Within hours, people would be whispering about why Caroline Bennett demanded a DNA test on her own grandson. But at the time, I didn't care. I was thinking only about Noah and about my grandmother. My grandmother, Evelyn, was the person who raised me almost as much as my mother did. She lived in an old white house on the edge of town, sitting on 120 acres of land. There was an apple orchard, a small pond, a barn, and a patch of woods. As a child, I thought that place was vast. I could run between the trees for hours. Grandma never told me not to get my dress dirty, never scolded me for scraped knees, and she never said, "A young lady should act proper." Instead, she would say, "The only thing that matters is that you are a good person." My mother felt differently. To her, the most important thing was looking good, getting a good job, marrying the right person, living in the right house, and carrying the right last name. She was obsessed with heritage. Our house held a large family Bible, with births, marriages, and deaths recorded inside. My mother knew the names of relatives back 4 generations. She could spend hours talking about who looked like whom, who inherited her great-grandfather's blue eyes, who inherited her grandmother's temperament, who was a real Bennett. She had a favorite saying, "Blood doesn't lie." She repeated it constantly, whenever someone married the wrong person, whenever someone adopted a child, whenever a neighbor's family took in a foster teenager, whenever someone in our family looked different. She would always say, "Blood doesn't lie." I never understood where that obsession came from, not until Noah was born. My husband Michael died 4 years ago. A car accident. Just an ordinary rainy evening. He was driving home from work. At an intersection, a truck lost control. Michael didn't have time to brake. They called me at 9:43 p.m. I still remember that exact time. I remember the phone sitting on the kitchen table, how I picked it up, how a stranger's voice asked, "Is this Allison Reeves?" I answered, "Yes." And a few minutes later, my life was over. Michael was a good husband, not perfect, but good. He loved Noah even before he was born. We spent 2 years trying to have a baby. After several failed attempts, the doctors suggested IVF. I was terrified. Michael held my hand. "If it works, we'll have a baby. And if it doesn't, then we try again. And if it still doesn't work," he smiled, "then it'll just be the 2 of us, annoying each other until we're old." I laughed. It worked. Noah was born in June. When Michael held him for the first time, he cried. I had never seen him cry before. He looked at me and said, "He's perfect." And he was right. Noah was small, noisy, curious, and incredibly sweet. He adored Grandma Evelyn. Every Sunday we would drive over to her house. She always baked him an apple pie. Noah called it Grandma's secret pie. After Michael died, Evelyn became my rock. She never said, "You have to be strong." She would say, "If all you can do today is get out of bed, that is enough." That was why her death shattered me more than I could ever put into words. I hadn't just lost a grandmother. I had lost the one person who always reminded me that I wasn't alone. After the funeral, we drove home. Noah sat in the back seat, staring out the window. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Why did Grandma say I might not be real?" I felt a sharp ache in my chest. She shouldn't have said that, but she did. I know. Am I real? I looked at him in the rearview mirror. "Of course you are. Are you sure?" "Absolutely." He thought about it for a moment. "What if the test says I'm not?" I pulled the car over near our house and turned around to face him. "Look at me." He did. "You are my son." "I know. I carried you for 9 months. He smiled a little. "That's a long time." I laughed through my tears. "A very long time. So I'm yours. Forever." He nodded and got out of the car. I sat there for a few more seconds, because I knew my son wasn't being put through this test because there was any real reason to doubt him. It was because my mother had decided to turn an inheritance into a weapon. 4 days after the funeral, we were sitting in our lawyer's office. Helen Parker had been our family attorney for almost 25 years. She knew my grandmother. She knew my mother. And she knew there had been tension in our family for a very long time. In the room sat me, Caroline, my uncle Robert, and my sister Madison. Madison had flown in from Chicago. She always tried to stay as far away from family drama as possible. I didn't blame her. Helen opened the folder. Evelyn's will was drawn up 2 years ago. My mother sat up straight. "As I understand it, the main estate is divided between Robert and me." "Yes." "Then why are we here?" Helen looked at her. "Because your mother modified her will 7 months before she passed away." My mother frowned. "What exactly did she change?" Helen turned a page. "The house." My mother tensed. "What about the house?" "The house, 20 acres of land surrounding it, and an investment account worth $460,000 are to be placed in a trust." My mother smiled slightly. "For me?" Helen shook her head. "For Noah Reeves." The room went dead silent. Madison was the first to break it. "Noah?" "Yes." My mother stared at the documents. Then she asked, "Why?" Helen replied, "Because that is what Evelyn wanted. She could have changed her mind. She didn't." My mother turned her gaze toward me. "And who is the trustee?" "Allison." I felt my stomach drop. My mother asked sharply, "Until what age?" "Until he turns 25. And after that, Noah receives full control." My mother said nothing. I could see her doing the math. The house, the land, nearly $500,000, and none of it was going to her. It was going to my son. Helen closed the folder. If there are no other questions, that concludes. There are, my mother interrupted.
Helen, stop it.
Yes? My mother looked at her. Standard legal language in wills refers to direct biological descendants. I demand official proof of our lineage, the entire chain. Noah, Allison, myself, and Robert. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Helen frowned. Caroline, are you intentionally trying to initiate a full family identification process? I'm not contesting anything. Then why demand a full panel? My mother looked at me, to be certain. I stood up. Fine. She froze. What? Fine. Let's do the full lineage test. Helen looked at me.
Alison.
Let her do it. My mother was visibly caught off guard. Are you sure? Yes. You aren't afraid of the result? I looked her straight in the eye. No. She smiled. But the smile was strange. Too confident. And for the first time, I felt a creeping suspicion. My mother knew something I didn't. A week later, she came to my house. I was in the kitchen. Noah was doing his homework. She placed a white envelope on the table. What's this? Open it. Inside was a cashier's check. $50,000. I looked at her. What for? I'm offering you a deal. What kind of deal? You sign over your control of Noah's trust to me. Sign the papers, drop claims to the land, and we withdraw the request for the DNA panel. I didn't understand right away. What? You sign the documents. Renounce control of the house. Renounce claims to the land. And we don't do the test. I stared at the check. You're trying to buy my resignation? I'm trying to avoid trouble. $50,000 to give up assets worth millions? She didn't answer. I looked up at her face. You do realize how suspicious this looks, right? She snatched the check back sharply. I am trying to help you. No.
Alison.
You're afraid of the test. She went completely silent. I saw it then. For the very first time. Not anger, not annoyance. Fear. Real, raw fear. Why? I asked. Don't ask questions. Why are you afraid? She grabbed her purse. Think about my offer. I won't accept it. She paused by the door. You don't know what you're doing. And do you? She looked back at me and said, sometimes, certain doors are better left closed. Then she walked out. I was left standing in the middle of the kitchen. Noah looked up from his homework. Who was that? Grandma. Is she mad? I stared at the closed door. I don't know. For the first time in my life, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of the test results anymore. I was afraid of the truth my mother was trying so desperately to hide. I didn't sleep that night. I pulled out old photo albums, pictures of my grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, Uncle Robert, me, Madison. I spread them out across my bed. And for the first time, I noticed something strange. My grandfather William had been tall, blonde hair, blue eyes. My grandmother Evelyn was short, with green eyes. Robert inherited his mother's green eyes. So did I. So did Madison. So did Noah. And my mother? Dark brown eyes, dark hair, a completely different face shape. I had never paid attention to it before. Now, I couldn't stop staring. I pulled out a photograph of my mother as a little girl. On the back it read, Caroline, Christmas 1973. I stared at it. Then I remembered something my grandmother had said. A few months before she passed, she told me out of nowhere, if Caroline ever starts talking to you about bloodlines, ask her about the fall of '86. I had laughed back then. What happened in '86? Grandma had just looked at me softly. You'll understand someday. I had assumed it was just another vague comment. Now I wasn't so sure. I looked at the photograph again and asked myself for the very first time, what happened in the fall of 1986? The DNA testing was scheduled at a laboratory in Columbus. My mother insisted on official legal protocol, court-admissible chain of custody, supervised collection, no home kits, no chances for error. I agreed. Noah sat in the car playing on my phone. My mother arrived separately. When we walked inside, a lab technician explained the procedure. We'll collect samples from all participating members. From everyone? My mother asked. Yes. Why? To ensure absolute accuracy across the family lineage panel. She looked at me. Who else is testing? I answered. Me, my son, my mother, and my uncle. My mother spun around sharply. Robert too? Yes. Why? It's standard procedure to verify the generational branch. She didn't say a word, knuckles white, her hands clenched tightly. Robert arrived a few minutes later. My mother looked at him, and for a split second, I saw terror in her eyes. Not annoyance, not resentment, pure terror. Robert didn't notice anything.
Hey, Caroline. Hi.
We provided our samples. All the vials were sealed. Documents signed. When we stepped outside, my mother approached me. Are you happy now? Yes. Do you really think this is going to turn out well? For Noah? Yes. She looked at me coldly. You have no idea how this ends. I replied, it seems like you do. She turned away without another word. 3 days passed. Then 5. Then 10. Nothing. My mother didn't call. Didn't text. I began to think that maybe she had just been frightened of the results and was now waiting anxiously, just like me. On the 11th day, something shifted. Helen called me. Allison, are you home? Yes. I need you to come to my office right away. What's wrong? She hesitated for a beat. The preliminary results are in. My mouth went completely dry. Noah? He's fine. I let out a long breath. Then what is it? Just come over. 40 minutes later, I was in her office. Robert was already sitting there. Helen closed the door. I received the findings. I sat down. Noah? Biological mother-son relationship confirmed. He is your son. I closed my eyes. Tears leaked out instantly. To what probability? Greater than 99.99%. Robert smiled. Well, that settles it then. Helen didn't smile. She opened a second folder. There is an additional finding. I felt a sudden cold chill. What finding? Caroline. Robert frowned. What about her? Helen placed a document on the desk between us. The markers do not align with the expected relationship between Carolyn and you, or between Carolyn and Robert. Robert laughed nervously. That's impossible. Helen shook her head. The lab reran the panel twice. And? The result is the same. I stared at the paper. What does that mean? Helen spoke softly. It means Caroline Bennett and Robert Bennett do not share biological parents. They are not brother and sister. The world around me came to a dead stop. Robert slowly stood up. This has to be a mistake. We thought so too. Then order a third test. They already did. It yielded the exact same result. My mother's face flashed in my mind. Her words, her panic, the $50,000 check. Sometimes, certain doors are better left closed. In that moment, I understood everything. She wasn't afraid for Noah. She was afraid for herself. That evening, I drove out to Grandma's house. Legally, it now belonged to Noah, but Evelyn's belongings were still everywhere inside. I walked into her bedroom. Everything was left exactly as if she had just stepped out into the kitchen. Her reading glasses rested on the nightstand. A book lay beside them. On the wall hung a childhood picture of my mother. I stood staring at it for a long time. Then I remembered. The fall of 1986. I opened her closet. Grandma had always kept important papers in a wooden box. I found it tucked underneath a stack of old quilts. Inside were birth certificates, letters, photos, old receipts, and a small, worn leather journal. On the first page, the date read, December 12, 1968. My hands began to tremble. I opened it. The first entry read, Today we brought the baby girl home. My breath caught. The next page, she is only a week old. Her biological mother was very young and couldn't keep her. Her parents turned her away. I turned another page. William says this must remain our secret. Another. We named her Caroline. I kept reading. Robert held her for the first time today. And he called her his baby sister. Tears dripped onto the yellowed pages, but I couldn't stop reading. And then I found the entry that made my heart freeze. Caroline accidentally found the adoption papers today and discovered the truth. The date, October 18th, 1986. My mother had known. She had known for 40 full years. In an instant, everything clicked into place. Her lifelong obsession with bloodlines, her irrational fear, her hatred of adoption, her sudden suspicion of Noah, her desperate attempt to control the inheritance. But one question remained. Why had she never told us? I turned the page and found her answer. She screamed at me that I stole her real life. She said that if the family ever found out she didn't have Bennett blood, no one would ever consider her a real part of this family again. The following entry read, I told her that family isn't defined by blood. And the very last one. She didn't believe me. I closed the journal. For the first time, I truly understood. My mother hadn't just been keeping a secret. She had lived 40 years in absolute terror of being exposed as an outsider. And in demanding a test to expose my son, she had opened the door to her own undoing.